This video will contain spoilers for Jujutsu Kaisen chapters 91, 92, and 93, and Season 2, Episode 10, otherwise known as Episode 34. So, the second season of Jujutsu Kaisen is descending into pandemonium, and in this series, I'm going to be analyzing the story of the series as it airs and, as a manga reader, comparing the anime to the manga to see what they pulled over directly, what they modified or expanded, and what they just straight up removed. So let's begin with the 10th episode of Season 2 of Jujutsu Kaisen. First, I'll recap the plot and explain what chapters it covered. The episode begins right where we left off last week, with Yuji's immediate reaction being to try and destroy the Mechamaru thing he just found on his ear. Mechamaru quickly relays that Gojo has been sealed. We cut to Gojo inside Geto's body as Geton's hand goes for his neck. The effect doesn't last long, and Geton basically laughs it off, remarking that it's a first time for him. Mahito walks over, and Geton points out the body he's usurped rebelling against him. He claims it as proof, alongside the fact that the host body's memories are passed along to him when he takes over, that the soul and the body are one and the same, whereas Mahito believes that the soul comes first and then the body is shaped by it, hence why he can reshape people's bodies by manipulating their souls. Mahito kinda just brushes off the philosophical talk and just posits that because their innate techniques are so different from one another, the way they see the world is completely different as well. Geton finds the idea that sorcerers' techniques shape their worldview to be poetic, but Gojo butts back in to remind him that he's still just kinda chillin' there, not fully sealed yet. Geton remarks that as much as he likes to view, it is smarter to get it over with, and closes the gate to Prison Realm, trapping Gojo inside the freaky Rubik's Cube meets the Lament configuration object. We cut back to Team Yuji, and Mei is incredulous that Gojo could have been sealed. Mechamaru offers an explanation, basically summing up that he had a contingency plan in place should two events occur. First, that he be dead, and second, that Gojo be sealed. Should these two circumstances come to be, then Mechamaru's contingency would activate and conjure into existence 3 of these communicators in different places in Shibuya. The contingency operates on residual cursed energy, so this isn't really Mechamaru, who is actually dead. It's kind of just like what's left of his energy, and once the energy runs out, he'll be truly gone forever. He explains that he chose Yuji as his human contact of his 3 placements due to his newness to the Jujutsu world, making the potential of him being any kind of traitor very slim. He also cleared Mei as a potential traitor because she was sent to Meiji Jingumae Station, rather than using her scouting abilities to aid the curses in Shibuya, as well as the fact that curse users are currently approaching to attack them. Yuji and Mei suddenly notice the hostile presence approaching, and Mei quizzes Yuji on gauging their strength, much like she did for Utahime back in 2006 as we saw in Episode 1. Yuji deduces that they're probably stronger than the Grasshopper Curse, and Mei posits that the Grasshopper Curse must have been at least semi-grade 1, solely based on the fact that it could hold a conversation. Mei questions where all the enemies were hiding, especially if they were that strong. She intends to ignore the approaching enemies and continue to check on Gojo, but Mechamaru advises against that plan of action. He explains the 4 curtains currently in effect around Shibuya, letting them know that farther along the tracks is another barrier stopping sorcerers from entering where Gojo is. Also, because most of the sorcerers on standby waiting for Gojo are probably already inside the curtains, cell phone communication will also be nixed. Since Mei can't get a hold of the assistant supervisors outside the curtain, Mechamaru implores her to consider his plan, which she agrees to hear. He directs Yuji to head above ground and regroup with the other sorcerers in Shibuya to inform them of Gojo's sealing, because unsealing him has to be a collaborative effort to ensure the highest chances of success. He directs Mei to remain underground and clear a path for Yuji, and make sure he doesn't have any pursuers, since they don't know their enemy's plans of engagement. Mei tries to figure out some way to enrich herself, because of course she does, and Mechamaru reiterates that if Gojo is successfully removed from play, all of human society will fall apart. Mei's brother decides to stick with her, because of course he does, and the curse users finally arrive. We cut away to Geton and his posse, with Jogo and Choso now awake. As Geton tries to explain what they'll do next, the prison realm suddenly plummets into the ground, making a decently sized little crater. As Geton seems flustered, Gojo notices that time doesn't pass for him inside the prison realm, as he wards off an army of bastard skellies with infinity. He remarks that he screwed up and this will make life harder for everyone else, but he has faith in his fellow sorcerers and students to get the job done. At 9:22 p.m., almost an hour after Gojo arrived in Shibuya, 42 minutes after the start of his battle with the disaster curses, and probably about 12 minutes or so after he was sealed, the three groups of sorcerers on standby end their standby and enter the curtains to attack now that transfigured humans have emerged from the buildings to attack civilians at street level. Team Nanami takes note of the abrupt appearance of an anti-sorcerer curtain as soon as Gojo entered the Hikarie building, but also note that they have no way of knowing what the enemy's plan is, only that they have one. Nanami directs Ino and Megumi to rescue as many civilians as possible while he plans to go deal with the curtain. We cut away to Ejichi, coordinating outside the curtain with his two phones. He directs Nita to confirm the situation and exit the curtain, then remain outside as a central contact point. He figures if they call in everyone they have, they should be able to arrange a system for constant communication. Unfortunately, a stupid blonde asshole has something to say about that. He turns Ejichi into a shish kebab, or maybe yakitori would be a more appropriate word to use, and he falls to the ground. This guy was introduced back during the Goodwill event when he attacked Utahime and was confronted by Nobara and Mai. He claims picking on the weak suits him well, and confirms with the monk we also learned about after the Goodwill event, who tells him to patrol the outside of the curtain and kill anyone wearing a suit, effectively telling him to target assistant supervisors. We cut back to Gatont and Co., 4 minutes after the sorcerer teams came off standby, and he explains to Mahito that while the seal is complete, Gojo is so strong it will take time for Prison Realm to process him and they won't be able to move it until it's done. The second of Mekamaru's residual communicators is hanging on an air vent nearby, which the villains notice and Mahito takes it out. Gatont points out that they were had, and we cut to Mekamaru relaying to Yuji, who is currently booking it at street level towards Shibuya, 1 minute later and 5 minutes after the three sorcerer groups came off standby and entered the fray, that the enemy are unable to move Gojo from B5F, because he's Gojo. He tells Yuji the plan is now to surround the station from all the other stations nearby and attack from all directions as soon as the curtain stopping them is dropped. Yuji questions how he's meant to get the message to everyone if he can't get a hold of Ejichi, but thinks back to when he asked Mei who all is in Shibuya and comes up with a plan. He enters the curtain surrounding Shibuya and is immediately confronted by the sight of transfigured humans assaulting civilians, giving him PTSD flashbacks to when he was forced to kill 4 of them back at the school when he first confronted Mahito. He takes the time to quickly eliminate all the transfigured humans around him at high speed, taking out a real chonker ahead of him, before nimbly hopscotching up a nearby building with a 4-way billboard atop it, taking a deep breath, and using his prodigious lung capacity and voice projection skill, shouts out to Nanami that Gojo has been sealed. Nanami immediately changes course, telling Ino and Megumi they need to meet up with Itadori and confirm the details, because if Gojo has been sealed, that means it's all over for humans in Japan. We cut back to Gatont, who realizes the jig is up and they'll soon be assaulted by sorcerers en masse. He asks the others what they want to do, and Choso stakes his claim on killing Yuji and Nobara for killing his brothers, while heading back to Jujutsu High to reclaim his other siblings. Jogo denies this request since they intend to invoke Sukuna, but Choso says he doesn't care. While they nearly go at it, Mahito stakes his own claim on killing Yuji, but at least offers the thought process that with Gojo out of the picture, the curses and the human forces are about evenly matched, so they don't even really need Sukuna. So even with killing Yuji, they can still win. They all don't seem to agree on much of anything, other than wanting curses to win the overall battle. So Mahito proposes to make a game of it. If he finds Yuji first, he can kill him. If Jogo finds him first, he can turn him into Sukuna. Choso also chimes in to join the game, so if he finds Yuji first, he can kill him. Jogo is still the voice of dissent, seeming like the adult in the room. Mahito asks Gatont what he's going to do, and he claims he has to pass since he has to stay and watch the prison realm, which Mahito seems to hit X to doubt on. Nonetheless, he runs off with Choso in close pursuit, and Dagon even silently follows after them like some kind of excited puppy. Jogo, despite his misgivings, also takes off after them. With the others gone, Gatont turns and addresses someone, saying he thinks the curses are smarter than them. Hidden amongst the crowd, Nanako and Mimiko, the twins that Geto saved from their sorcerer-phobic village back when he broke bad, and who we also saw grown up as they currently are briefly during the movie, emerge and threaten Gatont, saying they only worked with him because he agreed to forfeit the body once his plan worked out, and telling him to stop playing with the body of the man who was effectively their father. He basically tells them to pound sand since they didn't make a binding vow with him for those conditions, and they threaten him further, which he returns. They tell him he'll regret his actions, and he claims not to even remember what regret feels like anymore. We cut back to Yuji screaming his head off, and Megumi arrives with the others to get him to knock it off. Nanami asks Mekamaru to confirm that Geto did it, and Mekamaru clarifies that it's a Geton't. And he also says the thing, the title of the episode. They confirm the plan, and Nanami explains that as a grade 1 sorcerer, he can use his position to ask Ijichi to do things the others can't. So he'll head outside the curtain and do so. He tells Ino to take the other two and deal with the curtain that's restricting sorcerers' movements, and to explain the situation and ask for help from any of the other teams if they run into them. He tells Ino he's leaving the two students in his care and takes off. Taking in the moment and relishing in Nanami relying on him, he finally pipes up to clarify the importance of what they're doing to Megumi and Yuji. He explains that Gojo being unsealed would upset the balance of everything, and that there are cursed spirits and curse users who have probably been in hiding who will now emerge since Gojo isn't around to intimidate them into submission. With the weight of the future of the country on their shoulders solidly acknowledged, they reaffirm their goal to save Gojo. We cut away to a rooftop nearby, where 3 Saturday morning cartoon-ass villains are gathered, discussing the sealing of Gojo, as they stand near 3 of the commissioned curtain nails, implying they're the ones guarding the curtain blocking sorcerers. And the episode ends. With recap out of the way, let's go over the main points of the plot. 1. Mekamaru is back in action for limited engagement only, as he set up a contingency based on Gojo being sealed using residual cursed energy to help organize a rescue. 2. Yuji splits off from Mei and her brother to go above ground and get the word out to the sorcerer teams that Gojo has been sealed. 3. On Geton's side, Prison Realm is unable to be moved as it processes Gojo, locking them in position. Mahito, Choso, Dagon, and Jogo run off to try and hunt down Yuji for their different individual ends, while Geton stays behind to guard the Prison Realm. 4. Yuji meets up with Team Nanami, and Nanami decides to head outside the curtain to rendezvous with Ijichi, while sending Ino, Megumi, and Yuji to take care of the curtain-blocking sorcerers from entering the platform where Gojo is. 5. We see a group of heretofore unknown curse users stand guard around the commissioned curtain nails for the curtain, preparing to tussle. Now let's get into some analysis. First, I want to reiterate what's going on with Mekamaru here. What he's doing is operating off of a contingency and residual cursed energy left over from when he was still alive, probably some kind of binding vow that causes the residual energy to go into effect. Just so no one's confused and thinks Mekamaru is somehow still alive, Mekamaru is not still alive, he is 100% dead. He's effectively just being used as a plot device to allow the heroes to gain access to information they need to keep the plot moving the way it needs to. Now let's talk about Mahito and Geton's discussion about the nature of the soul and how curse techniques shape worldview. So just to make it clear, Mahito's position on the matter is that the soul must come first, and then the body is formed by it afterwards. He believes this because his curse technique, idle transfiguration, allows him to reshape the bodies of humans by manipulating their souls. So it of course makes sense to him that the soul must come first, considering the soul can change the body after the fact when the soul itself is changed. Geton, however, seems to believe they must be one and the same, not even separate things, with his evidence being Geto's body rebelling against him, however short-lived that might be, and the fact that the host's memories are passed along to him when he takes over. So basically, his view is that even though you would think the host's memories would be in the brain and so would be gone when he does his little swaparoo, they must be in the soul, which must be somehow attached to the body, because they are passed along to him when he takes over. Similarly, Geto's body rebelling against him must mean the soul is part of the body, because there's no consciousness of Geto's left in there to fight back against him. This is drawing on the established idea we already have that Sukuna and Yuji share a body, and according to Mahito, that means there are actually 2 souls in that body, one for Yuji and one for Sukuna. Geton is different, as he isn't inhabiting a body that was still alive, so the only soul currently in that body should be his own. Now, as an outside observer, it seems to me like they're both kind of glossing over the potential for other explanations to exist that would still be true based on the evidence they have. This is a common thing you'll see people do. It's called a confirmation bias. Basically, they ignore the possibilities and evidence that disprove their theory, purposely selecting and interpreting evidence as supportive of their pre-existing beliefs. In this conversation, both Mahito and Geton are engaging in their own confirmation biases, ignoring the possibility of the evidence they have working against their theory and or supporting a different one. It's easy to see from the outside that it could be entirely possible for the soul and the body to be separate things that just have a more complex relationship than either of them are theorizing. I don't really understand the thought process Geto uses to point out Geto's body resisting him as proof that the soul and the body are one and the same, as he would have no way of knowing whether he shares the body with Geto's soul or not, unless there was some conversation that happened off screen between him and Mahito where Mahito confirmed to him that there was only one soul in his body. I think I'll revisit this analysis at a later date, as there are some more things related to it coming up soon, but I don't want to spoil them just to talk about them here. But based on what I know, I think it's safe to say this is another one of those things it's best not to think too much about if you want things to continue making sense. Next, we return to the Juju stroll. In this episode, we had a couple opportunities to see more of Shibuya. First, I hunted down the 4 subway entrances shown in this episode, so here's what they look like in the show alongside their real-life counterparts. Next, when Yuji is running along at street level from Meiji Jingumae towards Shibuya, he's actually running along Fire Street. And yes, that is actually its name. Even in the original Japanese, they use katakana to spell out Faya, towards the Scramble Crossing. This street eventually becomes Jingu Street. In Japanese, they use the word dori for street, so this would just be called Jingu Dori. There are 2 interesting landmarks here. The Tower Records building, which I point out here. It seems like the curtain starts right between the Tower Records building and the next building after it, which I point out here. And just a little way down and across the street from that, this kind of overgrown garden facade type building with the Modi sign. The Modi building is effectively behind the camera, like we're looking at things as if we were standing where that building is. Anyway, Yuji enters the curtain here, and these are the buildings where the giant transfigured human jumps out at him, and then he Assassin's Creed meets Infamouses his way up this building with the billboard on top of it. I checked all the way back to 2018, but it doesn't appear as though this billboard ever looked quite the way it does in the show, but that's fine, you can still tell that this is the same building. Here's where that is in relation to the Scramble Crossing. Finally, the second thing we saw here was the Shibuya Cerulean Tower. In the manga, this building isn't identified until the next chapter, and even then, it's just called the C Tower, but this is indeed known as the Shibuya Cerulean Tower, and is actually a Tokyo hotel. The 3 new enemies we're introduced to are standing on top of it. It's just a little ways south and to the east of the Scramble Crossing. Finally, let's check out the liner pages between these chapters in the volume release. After Chapter 91, we get a little chibi depiction of how to operate Prison Realm. After Chapter 92, we get a page where Akutami addresses the subway routes Mekamaru plans to use. He explains that the Ginza line is also a subway route present in Shibuya, but didn't include it because it runs above ground. Finally, after Chapter 93, we get another page of the same, imploring the reader to read Volume 0 if they don't know who Nanako and Mimiko are. Of course, you could also just watch the movie now as well. And that's my episode recap and story analysis for the 10th episode of the 2nd season of Jujutsu Kaisen. Make sure to subscribe and turn on bell notifications if you want to be here as soon as possible each week as I put out new videos for each episode as it airs, and feel free to drop a comment with suggestions as to other videos you might like to see, such as character analysis videos or explanations. Thanks for watching.